To answer the question of why novel research is inhibited, we need to look at how the road to hell is paved with basic human needs, which can occur outside of the research community just as much as inside. How systemic problems are often hidden from outsiders. The many ways in which inhibition is manifested, including some very subtle ways, and easy to miss clues in plain sight. We will jump through a few topics, so hold on tight. To better understand why academic fields may actively inhibit new research, we got to separate from the intrigue of research completely. Let's look at an example far from science, a system that had far more resources, also had the best intentions, but within it, the people that distributed resources also had influence on the rules. And I'm talking about the Soviet management, and bear with me here. Sorry for the pun. The Soviet system fielded some of the top mathematicians and physicists and had a good education system. For example, they were the first to explore space. However, the Soviet system lacked in sustained progress. For example, Soviet cars were subpar, years behind the West in technology, comfort, safety, and reliability. Buildings were gray and the same. Many goods and technologies and comforts, including food, were unavailable and long lines were ubiquitous. But hey, this was in stark contrast to the images and words portrayed by the Soviet mouthpiece. They would paint pictures of grand cities, power, abundance, big parades with highly revered and idolized leaders. At times, those that complained or pointed out lack of progress were even prosecuted. The Soviets projected more propaganda and progress than it achieved. So how did things get to be this way? I can't imagine this state of affairs was anyone's intention. The core problem seems to be that bureaucrats had great power and could both evaluate progress and decide who gets resources. Soviet bureaucrats that thrived in the systems were known as apparatchiks. Let's use that term here to designate a person whose primary concern is about their family's means, having a stable income for years to come, and making sure they deliver resources and evaluate projects to assure this. An apparatchik is actually not inherently evil. In fact, the primary concern is understandable and is even the cornerstone of some of the very successful free market systems. But in a bureaucracy, this motivation is not aligned with the overall goal. If the same people control evaluation and resources, this enables a lopsided competition for unbalanced power, which can ultimately erode the bureaucracies. It's not possible to have a free market where the same people both control and evaluate resources. When resources are limited, competition between apparatchiks ensues and can lead to significant dysfunction, because the self-preservation priority in resource allocation, all other things and functions may be starved, but the bureaucracy will keep on being fed. While the apparatchiks will tell everybody outside about the grandeur, develop milestones to positively evaluate themselves and their cronies. Eventually, those that have the staying power in the system are the apparatchiks most adept at maintaining power, not the innovator, not the ones that produce the best results, but the ones that know the system and know how to express results in the right way to the system. Sometimes the ones in control are the only ones that know the right way because they control the evaluation. Now, innovation is unpredictable and only sometimes works. And a person that focuses on innovation may be distracted and misled by the apparatchik milestones And in addition, going against the current leadership would limit the ability to find a job, thus keep the status quo and the bureaucrats where they are. Thus, even though products were subpar, lines were long, in apparatchik motivated evaluation and propaganda, everything was great. And it's very difficult to change this misalignment. For example, adding more bureaucracy or even making fixed decision rules. Think the apparatchiks making and modifying formulas or criteria may not work because any attempt can be eventually corroded. Bureaucrats are experts at hijacking systems. Basic research is customized and far from the market. Systems like capitalism do not meaningfully engage because they're interested in more completed research that is less monetarily risky and closer to making money. So centralized government support remains the primary source of support for long-term basic research. Therefore, the Soviet system is a great euphemism for research administration, how the resources are distributed and evaluated. But unfortunately in science, we can't really compare the basic science results achieved by another system, like we could compare progress for cars between the Western and Soviet systems. That leaves us the question, is the academic system euphemistically producing subpar cars and gray buildings? Think, subpar research that's not reproducible or replicable, problems for unconnected new researchers, and barriers for new ideas. A large part of academia may be composed of embedded cronies concerned about their positions and afraid of change. They do a good job of actively convincing everybody, the public and naive students, that they and academia are furthering research. Meanwhile, researchers truly trying to innovate experience lack of opportunity in every aspect, from exposure, publishing, conferences, to evaluations, grants, contorted definitions, to untrustable science, unworkable benchmarks, and obfuscations. Academia is much more political than anyone likes to admit. The academics' primary focus becomes to support themselves and obtain research funds. This is a competitive political process where each individual does not want to risk becoming irrelevant. Whether they admit it or not, they will be very resistant to topics which they are not familiar with. Thus, as a researcher, you will face an unspoken resistance by the establishment to new ideas and perspectives. Subjective evaluation mechanisms benefit apparatchiks such as subjective paper, grant, and tenure reviews. Subjective aspects of peer review in a competitive environment can be used to force a narrow narrative that keeps the apparatchiks as the premier authority and in control. And they benefit from obfuscations in their efforts to remain in this control through many ways, such as incomplete instructions, making their own research hard to repeat, but requiring others to match their unrepeatable or unreplicable results. Apparatchiks can even benefit by rejecting other works with contrived and nonsensical reasons, while providing as little appeal or follow-up as possible, and dead-end answers. This poor behavior is so pervasive in academics that bullying becomes part of academic work environments. About 43% of researchers encounter toxic bullying, and 61% have witnessed it. I wonder if the discrepancy between reporting, experiencing, and witnessing it is because of fear of personally revealing it, since the bully may decipher who is being talked about if a researcher is describing their own experience. The vast majority of researchers have encountered such unwelcoming environments and metrics, as shown by a survey by the Wellcome Trust of thousands of researchers. often talks are preceded by how great the person or the department and the pedigree of the advisors are. And such pedigree can matter more than new research. Students of the same advisors, methods of thought, supporting the same opinion, work as cliques holding the doors of publications and grant money. Apparatchiks are empowered by their control, each controlling their specific subfield. The competition and vying for position tends to cut out islands of influence that are fiercely protected because the researcher's livelihood depends on it. So even research across sub-disciplines is difficult as authorities in each discipline want to maintain their own turf and narratives. And a multidisciplinary and novel approach may not be the best strategy to succeed, despite grant agencies and departments claiming this is what they're looking for, and despite the fact that certain fields such as brain research is best studied through a multidisciplinary perspective, looking for algorithms or explanations that are computationally plausible with big data, but also display human cognitive reaction times, flexibility, neuroscience phenomena such as network-wide bursting. But the reality is, neuroscience apparatchiks won't care about cognitive phenomena, or whether their models are scalable in all of their aspects, especially established models. And any discussion of this is outside the purview and grounds for rejection. Cognitive science apparatchiks won't care whether certain cognitive models are scalable or may be better from a neuroscience perspective, while computer science apparatchiks won't care or be rigorous about neural or cognitive plausibility. Instead, they will prefer algorithms that do the best in competitions that may require domain-specific knowledge to better game the tests. On some level, there is appreciation of the political difficulties. This may be why grant agencies trumpet their interest in multidisciplinary research. But the reality is these end up being empty statements managed by apparatchiks, as the academic apparatchiks are the ones that evaluate grants. And then there is politics within the fields that can make definitions confusing, as the definitions can be shifted to publish more papers, diluting goals and making multidisciplinary research even harder. Let's look at a concrete example of these politics that can be appreciated by just looking at how the article is published. The goal of the Omniglot Challenge in the computer science literature was to benchmark the current ability of algorithms to learn quickly in a flexible manner, more like humans. But follow-up publications changed the challenge instead of the hard part, developing new algorithms. Apparatchiks can redefine definitions to publish more papers, and you see this in many fields where a previous definition gets redefined into something else, and now there's a whole new subfield and papers by all the same authors. Notice this article talks about the redefinition of the Omniglot Challenge and how that diluted the purpose instead of generating new approaches. This article subsequently was not publishable in a computer science journal, which is where it desperately needs to be seen. In fact, it's possible if one of the authors above is up for tenure, a more permanent position, with this outspoken publication, the young faculty may be at risk from promotion or even academia, as the article exposes the status quo in an unflattering way. Tenure is almost a decade-long procedure, and there are additional professorial ranks where more senior academics can control more junior professors and their narratives through yet another political process. So could it be research is often reformatted, rehashed, bent, politicized, and redone, promoting insignificant changes analogous to dull gray buildings, long lines, and lack of basic necessities. From the outside, it is very hard to see the effects of the same people evaluating and distributing resources. However, evaluation and allocation of resources get sidetracked all the time. With academic conference and publication mechanisms managed as monetized businesses, they have become pay-to-play systems. Conferences can't afford their venue unless authors pay. But conferences must still offer the established apparatchiks full support, including stipend and travel expenses for keynotes, invited talks, and papers. The pay-to-play conference and publication systems subsidize apparatchiks and keep them in their position so competitors and especially new people without resources cannot get in. Thus, even if a scientist is willing to make a personal sacrifice to promote a new idea without taking a salary, they still cannot participate because they have to bear the cost of subsidizing apparatchiks and at best only obtaining limited exposure windows, as all the focus and hype goes to the apparatchiks. So the apparatchiks control what gets funded, what gets approved, what gets exposure, whether work becomes an unseen poster or a front page, well-read paper or attended talk. They allow only incremental research to assure they will remain experts and in control. And in doing so, they shepherd a narrow narrative required for success, even if it involves warping statistics and sketchy methods, despite most scientists' awareness of statistical limits. It's basically not the best intentioned science conversation, and one of exclusion. While, on the other hand, favorites would be supplied information and minders to make sure that they get walked through the process correctly and not run into hiccups. So apparatchiks control who gets funded, who gets the real access. In fact, qualified researchers cannot apply for grants unless they belong to an institution. Moreover, grant selection criteria often involve belonging to specific institutions, and this is not commonly revealed in grants. In fact, flying in the face of highly competitive vetting, grant agencies are notoriously bad at predicting which grants will be successful. Despite these issues, are the grant narratives of abundance and progress projected? Think self-accolading journals, departments, government agencies such as DARPA, NSF, NIH, which project messages of grandeur, strength, vast research opportunities, but have nicknames such as not invented here for the NIH by the scientists who know better. In fact, the last Nobel Prize winner of 2019, Michael Mayer, suggests academia cannot be relied upon to support new scientists and ideas. Nobel Prize winner Peter Higgs, who predicted the Higgs boson in the 60s, suggests given the academic pressures of today, he would not have been able to do his work. The best strategy towards research for success is doing the most incremental work possible, presenting it in an exciting way and calling it novel. A strategy of minimizing novelty will not worry apparatchiks about their standings or positions, and such work will be more readily accepted. However, this type of effort becomes more an exercise in marketing than the novel research which is allegedly desired. So the best politicians succeed, not the best research. All this points to very poor behavior from the most educated and successful ranks of research, both in the past and in the present. So what can be done?